Rain slashed through the black canopy of the pines, each drop carrying with it the smell of resin and smoke. The forest was restless, groaning under the storm, branches snapping like brittle bones in the gale. Elias Crow swung his axe into the trunk before him, the blade sinking deep, his muscles moving with practiced rhythm. He worked like a man intent on outrunning thought. But the storm wasn't the loudest thing in the woods that night. A cry pierced through the rain, thin, high, desperate. Elias froze, his axe embedded in oak. He turned, squinting through the blur of water. Two small figures stumbled down the slope, mud plastered to their legs, hair clinging to their faces. They moved like shadows, but their voices, raw and urgent, cut with the clarity of a knife. "Please, help!" The lumberjack straightened, towering even in stillness. 7 feet of scarred, corded muscle. His beard dripped rainwater. His eyes, pale and heavy, looked almost carved from ice. He had spent years ignoring voices that weren't his own, but something in those cries dug under his ribs. The figures rushed closer. They were children, twins maybe 9 years old, dark-skinned, barefoot, their small hands clutching one another. The boy spoke first, breath ragged, words fractured with fear. "Firemen come. Our people, they burn everything." Elias blinked rain from his lashes. He had seen villages burn before. The memory sat in him like rot, timbers collapsing, smoke strangling the sky. His wife's hand torn from his grip. His daughter's scream drowned in the roar. That was 20 years past, yet every storm carried the echo. "I'm no savior," he muttered, voice like gravel. He pulled the axe free, the wood groaning in protest. "You've found the wrong man." The girl stepped forward, mud sucking at her ankles. Her eyes, wide and fierce despite the tears streaking her cheeks, locked onto his. "You are big, strong. They fear you." Her voice cracked, but she did not falter. "If you do nothing, we die." Elias turned away, wiping rain from his brow with the back of his hand. He wanted to keep chopping, keep losing himself in the rhythm. The storm was easier to face than pleading eyes. He had built a life out here in the wilderness, alone among the trees, where no one asked him for anything and he asked nothing in return. That was how he survived. By not remembering. By not caring. But their voices followed him. He could feel their desperation coiling around him like smoke. He looked again. The boy's lip was split, blood mixing with rain. The girl's thin dress clung to her like a second skin, shivering despite her straight spine. Together they were so small, 2 flickers in the vast, uncaring dark. "Where?" His tone was sharp, unwilling. The twins turned, pointing through the storm toward the valley. The horizon glowed faintly, a smear of orange against the night. Flames licking higher than treetops. Elias's chest tightened. "How many?" "Too many," the boy whispered. "They have guns. Horses. They kill without mercy." Elias exhaled slowly, every muscle in his body taut with reluctance. He had promised himself he'd never step into another man's war. Every battle he'd known had stolen more than it gave. But the glow rising over the valley wasn't just fire. It was the ghost of another blaze, another night he hadn't been strong enough. He turned back to the children. They were shivering now, mud smeared on their faces, hands still clutching each other with desperate strength. His gaze softened just for a breath. In the boy's stubborn stance he saw his own daughter, defiant even as fear hollowed her eyes. The past clawed its way into the present, refusing to let him go. Elias rested the axe against his shoulder. "If I go, I can't promise you'll live. Can't promise anyone will." The girl's chin lifted, rain dripping from her lashes. "If you stay, we have no chance." The storm groaned above them, thunder shaking the ground. Elias stared once more toward the rising flames. The forest around him seemed to lean in, holding its breath. He had built his life on saying no, but silence now felt like betrayal. He grunted low and final. "Fine. Show me the way." The twins exchanged a glance, relief flashing like lightning across their faces. They stepped forward, one on each side of him, their small frames dwarfed by his looming presence. Together they began to move down the slope, toward the glow of fire and the promise of blood. As Elias trudged behind them, his boots sinking into the sodden earth, his chest grew heavier with each step. He knew this was no rescue, this was reckoning. From the ridge, the valley stretched out before them, trembling with flame. Black smoke spiraled upward, choking the sky. Shouts carried on the wind, mingling with the crack of gunfire. Tiny silhouettes, families scattering, were chased by mounted shadows with torches blazing. The boy grabbed Elias's arm, his small fingers digging into the muscle. "You see, they will kill everyone." Elias didn't answer. His throat tightened, words caught somewhere between rage and grief. He had thought himself hollow, emptied years ago by loss. But the sight below filled him with something raw and violent. The twins clung to him, their bodies trembling against his legs, waiting for judgment. He lifted the axe from his shoulder and stared into the firelit valley. His pulse thundered in his ears, louder than the storm, louder than the memories. For the first time in 20 years, Elias Crow felt the weight of choice pressing on him like a mountain. The flames roared higher, swallowing homes, reaching for the heavens. In their reflection, his eyes hardened. Without another word, he stepped forward, carrying the twins with him into the storm, into the fire, into the fight he swore he'd never face again. And in the distance, a scream tore through the night, a sound that promised the battle had already begun. The storm thinned as Elias and the twins pressed deeper into the trees, the roar of rain fading into a steady drizzle. The earth steamed where fire licked the valley below, carrying the smell of scorched pine and charred grain. Every step forward felt heavier than the last, as though the forest itself was testing his resolve. Elias's boots sank into mud, each pull of his legs dragging memories up from places he had buried them. The boy kept close to his side, eyes darting at every sound. The girl moved ahead, quick and sure-footed despite the darkness, glancing back often to be certain the giant followed. Their trust in him was wordless, unshakable, as if they had already decided that his strength was the only thread holding them to life. Elias hated that trust. It pressed against the hollow in his chest where his daughter's face used to live. The path bent along a river swollen from the storm. Water rushed black and violent, swollen branches hurtling downstream. Elias lifted the twins across one by one, their wet hands gripping his scarred shoulders. When he set them down on the far bank, they looked at him with eyes shining, not only with gratitude but with belief. He turned away quickly, unwilling to meet that gaze too long. The valley's glow brightened as they descended, orange bleeding into the night sky. Elias's hands tightened around the axe haft, the old weapon groaning as if it shared his reluctance. He had sworn never to raise it against men again. His promise was born in ashes, when he had stumbled through the ruins of his home, choking on smoke and holding nothing but regret. That oath had kept him alive, though not whole. To break it now meant tearing open a scar that had never healed. The girl whispered something in her own tongue, soft and melodic despite her trembling. The boy translated in halting English. "She says the fire is eating fast. By morning, nothing will remain." Elias's jaw clenched. His breath came heavier with each step. The twins walked in silence after that, their shoulders pressed together, two silhouettes bound by fear and stubborn courage. Elias trailed behind, fighting against the weight in his chest. Every sound of crackling fire carried him back to that night. His wife's scream muffled in smoke, his daughter's small hand slipping from his grip, the collapse of the roof as flames devoured everything. He had run, burned lungs heaving, only to emerge with nothing. That emptiness had driven him into the wilderness, into solitude, into the endless rhythm of axe and timber. Now the forest itself seemed to conspire to drag him back. The first signs of the raid lay scattered along the trail. A smoking wagon toppled on its side, a horse lying still with its flanks torn open, a doll half buried in the mud. The twins slowed, their eyes wide with the kind of horror that leaves no room for words. Elias crouched beside the doll, his massive hand lifting it from the dirt. Its glass eyes reflected the firelight, blank and accusing. He dropped it back into the mud and stood, his heart pounding harder. As they neared the ridge overlooking the village, sound reached them. Gunfire snapping through the storm's remnants, men shouting orders, women wailing in the distance. Elias motioned for the twins to stay low. His broad frame crouched behind a fallen pine, his eyes narrowing as he studied the valley. Below, chaos reigned. The small cluster of lodges and farmhouses was engulfed in fire, villagers scattering into the fields as mounted riders herded them like cattle. Men with torches shouted in triumph, setting flame to roof after roof. Others carried rifles, their reports splitting the night. Families stumbled through smoke, only to be dragged back or cut down. The boy beside him trembled, fists clenched so tight his knuckles whitened. "They are killing everyone." His voice was hoarse, torn between fury and despair. Elias felt the old instinct claw at him, the urge to turn, to vanish into the woods, to let the world destroy itself without his interference. Had always been easier that way. Easier to be a ghost in the timber, a giant only to trees. But then a single scream rose from the valley, piercing and shrill. Through the smoke he saw a child no older than the twins dragged by the arm, her face streaked with soot and tears. A man laughed as he yanked her toward the flames. Elias's grip on the axe tightened until his knuckles burned. His body trembled with a fury he had long denied himself. He remembered the heat of his daughter's hand, the fragile weight of her trust, the sound of her pleading voice. For years he had drowned it in silence, but the twins had torn open the dam, and now the flood surged through him unchecked. He rose to his full height, looming above the fallen pine. The twins looked up at him, their faces pale but resolute. They did not need to ask if he would go. The answer was in the way his shoulders squared, in the fire that had returned to his eyes. The boy grabbed his wrist before he could move. "If you fall, we fall too." His voice shook but held iron. Elias stared at him, surprised by the raw courage packed into so small a frame. For the briefest instant, he thought of his own daughter standing that way, her chin lifted against the dark. Something cracked inside him, not pain but release. He tore his wrist free gently, then rested his hand on the boy's shoulder. His voice rumbled low, steady as thunder. "Stay close. Don't run unless I say. And whatever happens, don't look back." The twins nodded, fear swallowed by determination. Elias turned toward the valley. Flames surged higher, shadows leaping like demons against the sky. The raiders moved with ruthless precision, but they had not yet seen the mountains stirring above them. He stepped out from the trees, each stride deliberate, the axe glinting in the firelight. The earth seemed to hold its breath as the giant lumberjack descended into the storm of smoke and gunfire. A raider's torch flared near the ridge, casting its glow across Elias's face. The man's grin faltered, then vanished altogether. He shouted something to his companions, his voice cracked with sudden fear. The twins crouched behind the fallen pine, their eyes wide as they watched the legend they had begged rise into battle. Elias Crow walked down the slope, rain and firelight carving his silhouette into something larger than man, something forged from grief and rage and the unyielding will to stand where he once fled. Below, the village burned, and with each step the distance between his past and present narrowed until it was gone. He lifted the axe from his shoulder. The storm had not ended, it was only beginning. The first man to see Elias froze where he stood, torch sputtering in the rain. For a breath the world held still, smoke curling upward, gunshots echoing farther down the valley, the cries of the fleeing drowned in storm and fire. Then Elias descended from the ridge, his axe glinting red in the firelight, and the raider screamed a warning that cut through the chaos. Heads snapped toward him, rifles lifted. Horses reared at the smell of smoke and the shadow of something enormous moving against the flames. Elias broke into a run, the ground trembling beneath his weight. Dots cracked. Bullets tore bark from the trees beside him, spat sparks off stone, but he didn't slow. His breath thundered. His eyes locked on the knot of riders scattering before him. The first fell before he could fire again. Elias swung his axe in a brutal arc, the blade catching man and torch together. The rider toppled, his fire spilling uselessly into the mud. Shouts rose. 2 more men spurred forward, guns flashing. Elias dropped low, the bullets whining overhead, then surged upward with a roar, driving his shoulder into one horse's chest. The animal screamed, collapsing, throwing its rider. Elias's fist followed, a single strike that silenced him. The twins scrambled down the slope behind him, keeping to the shadows, their small figures darting from cover to cover. They watched with wide eyes but did not cry out. Their silence was trust sharpened into survival. Another shot tore into Elias's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Pain exploded hot, sharp, but he stayed on his feet. His axe slipped in his grip. He clenched it tighter, teeth bared against the wound. The raider who fired jeered, raising his rifle again. Elias charged before the man could reload. One swing, clean and final, and the jeer turned to silence. Smoke thickened, swallowing the valley. Villagers fled past him, eyes wide at the sight of the giant fighting among them. Some stumbled, some paused, torn between fear of him and hope that maybe, just maybe, he stood for them tonight. Elias kept moving, carving a path through the chaos, each breath a battle, each step driven not by glory but by fury and memory. The twins found ways to fight in their own small measures. The boy hurled stones from his sling, knocking a pistol from a raider's hand. The girl's sharp cry warned Elias of another rifle lifted in the shadows, giving him just enough time to duck as the shot snapped past his ear. Together they stitched themselves to his side, threads of courage binding giant and children into one desperate force. But the raiders did not relent. More poured from the burning houses, flames lighting their faces, greed and cruelty gleaming in their eyes. Elias's breath grew ragged, his wounded shoulder slick with blood, his vision swimming with smoke. He stumbled once, dropping to a knee, and for a heartbeat he thought of lying down, letting the fire take him, letting the past win at last. Then a hand touched his. Trembling. The boy's voice, fierce despite its quiver. "If you fall, we fall too." Elias looked into those eyes, so much like his daughter's, defiant even when rimmed with fear, and something inside him hardened. He rose again, dragging his body forward, his axe whistling through the smoke. He would not fall. Not while they still clung to him. Through the haze, a figure appeared on horseback, larger than the rest. His coat marked with silver buttons, his hat wide and untouched by rain. He rode with the confidence of a man who owned more than land. He owned lives. His voice carried above the roar of fire, mocking, commanding. "So the giant comes down from his mountain. Do you think you can stop progress with muscle and wood, crow?" Elias knew that face. The railroad baron, greed carved into flesh. The man who had sent fire to the valley, who had decided human lives weighed less than steel rails and profit. Elias stepped forward, axe raised, every muscle screaming with pain and rage. The baron smiled coldly, drawing a polished pistol from his belt. "You're a relic, and relics burn." The crowd of raiders pulled back, forming a ring around the two. The fire painted the circle red, shadows flickering like specters. Elias tightened his grip, his breath coming in jagged bursts. His shoulder throbbed, blood soaking his shirt, but he stood tall, a wall of flesh and will. The first shot cracked. Elias twisted, the bullet grazing his ribs. He lunged forward, axe swinging. The baron's horse reared, hooves lashing. Elias struck its flank with the flat of the blade, sending the beast screaming sideways. The baron leapt clear, rolling through mud, pistol firing wildly. They clashed in the heart of the burning village, muscle against metal, fury against greed. Elias swung with earth-shaking power, the Baron dodging, firing shot after shot. Smoke swallowed them both, flashes of flame revealing fragments of the duel. Axe raised, pistol flashing, two shadows locked in brutal rhythm. The twins crouched at the edge of the circle, helpless to join, their eyes burning with terror. Each heartbeat was agony, each flash of gunfire a threat to the giant they had chosen. Elias staggered under another shot, blood hot against his side. The Baron laughed, cruel and sharp, circling like a wolf. "You can't save them. You couldn't save your own." The words cut deeper than bullets. Elias roared, a sound pulled from 20 years of silence and grief, and charged. His axe smashed into the Baron's pistol, tearing it from his hand, sending it spinning into the mud. The Baron scrambled back, reaching for the nearest torch, flame dancing in his eyes. Before Elias could strike, the Baron seized the girl, dragging her against his chest, the torch pressed inches from her hair. She cried out, struggling, her small hands clawing at his arm. The boy shouted, sprinting forward, but a raider shoved him back. Elias froze, every muscle locked, the axe heavy in his grip. His breath came in ragged gasps, his heart pounding so loud it drowned the fire. The Baron sneered, torch flickering dangerously close to the child. "Drop it," he hissed. "Drop the axe, giant, or I burn her where she stands." The circle of raiders tightened, eyes gleaming with cruel anticipation. The firelight threw Elias's shadow long and monstrous across the ground. He felt the weight of every loss, every mistake, every night he had lived with silence instead of screams. Now the silence broke. His voice rumbled low, filled with promise and threat. "Touch her, and I'll tear down every man you own." The torch inched closer. The girl's cry pierced the night. Elias's grip on the axe tightened. His body coiled, torn between surrender and the strike that could end it all. The flames roared higher, the circle held its breath, and the storm returned, rolling thunder across the valley. The fight was not over. It had only reached its most dangerous point. The torch wavered in the Baron's hand, firelight licking across the terrified face of the girl he held. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps, eyes fixed on Elias with desperate trust. The storm muttered above them, thunder rolling low as if the heavens themselves leaned close to witness what choice the giant would make. Elias stood rigid, axe raised, every tendon tight as rope. The Baron's sneer curved wider. "You've got nothing, Crow," the man hissed, pressing the burning brand closer. "One wrong swing and she burns. Drop it, and maybe the little one lives long enough to watch you die." Elias's chest heaved. For a moment, his strength threatened to break beneath the weight of memory. His daughter's scream in fire, her hand slipping from his forever. Not again. Not this child. Not tonight. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing, measuring distance and timing with the precision of a man who had swung an axe all his life. He moved. With a roar that split the smoke, Elias hurled himself forward. The Baron jerked the torch higher, but the giant's hand lashed out first, seizing the flaming brand. His palm blistered instantly, flesh sizzling, but he wrenched it from the Baron's grip and flung it into the mud. The girl tore free, stumbling into her brother's arms. Relief and terror mingled in their cries, but Elias gave no glance back. His eyes were locked on the man who had set the valley aflame. The Baron staggered, reaching for a knife hidden at his belt. Elias's axe came down in a furious arc, steel met steel, sparks bursting as the Baron caught the blow on his blade. The clash rang out above the roar of fire, two wills colliding, one driven by greed, the other by grief reborn as fury. They circled in the smoke, mud splashing underfoot, the village burning to cinders around them. The raiders watched in silence now, spellbound by the duel. None dared step forward. The storm drove rain harder, hissing against the flames, but neither man yielded. The Baron slashed, quick and vicious, but Elias absorbed the cuts, his massive frame pushing forward like an avalanche. Pain flared in his side. His shoulder screamed with each swing, but he fought through it, each strike heavier than the last. Then came the moment. The Baron lunged, knife aimed at Elias's throat. Elias twisted, catching the wrist in one massive hand. He drove his knee upward, forcing the man back, then swung the axe with his remaining strength. The blade buried deep into the ground beside the Baron's head, the earth shattering beneath the impact. Mud splashed high. The Baron froze, breath ragged, knife trembling in his grip. Elias's face loomed above him, rain streaking his beard, eyes lit not with rage now but with judgment. "You don't own this land," Elias growled. "And you don't own them." With one final surge, Elias wrenched the knife from the Baron's hand and drove him to the ground. The Baron scrambled, slipping in the mud, until the villagers, those who had fled, those who had hidden, stepped from the smoke. Men, women, elders, even children, their faces blackened with ash, surrounded him. Their fear was gone, replaced with fire of their own. They closed in, and the Baron's voice cracked as he shouted promises, threats, bargains no one cared to hear. His words drowned beneath the storm as the people he had sought to crush rose together. Elias let them take him. He stepped back, chest heaving, the weight of his axe dragging at his arm. The twins ran to his side, clinging to him, their small hands gripping his bloodied clothes. He looked down at them, faces streaked with soot, eyes wide with awe, and something in his chest eased at last. For the first time in decades, the hollow inside him wasn't empty. It was filled with their laughter, their courage, their fragile hope. The night quieted as the raiders fled or fell. Flames still chewed at the village, but the storm pressed harder, rain smothering fire, leaving only smoldering timbers and steam. The people gathered in the square, survivors huddling together, their eyes drawn again and again to the giant who had fought for them. Elias tried to shrug it off, to turn back to the woods, but the twins blocked his path. "Stay," the boy said, voice trembling but steady. "Please. We need you." Elias stared at him, torn between instinct and longing. For 20 years, he had been nothing but shadow, axe, and silence. But here, in the ruin of fire, stood a chance at something else. Not redemption, not erasure of loss, but a place to put the strength that had once failed him. His gaze shifted to the girl, who nodded fiercely, eyes shining. "Stay." He exhaled slowly, a sound half sigh, half surrender. "All right," he rumbled. For a while, the days that followed blurred into work. He helped drag beams from wreckage, lifted logs for rebuilding, split timber for fires that warmed instead of destroyed. His burned hand healed in stiff scars, but the twins were always there, chattering at his side, turning his gruff mutters into laughter. The villagers began to trust him, to call him protector, to treat the giant not as a legend to fear but as a man who chose to stand with them. Each night, as he sat by the fire, the ghosts pressed less heavily. Still he never forgot. When the girl laughed, he heard his daughter's echo. When the boy trained with a sling, he saw her defiant eyes. The pain remained, but it no longer hollowed him. It anchored him. On the ridge weeks later, when the valley lay quiet under a clear dawn, Elias stood tall with the twins beside him. Smoke no longer rose. Where flames had devoured, sprouts of green pushed through. The river ran full and strong, carrying ashes away. The village below stirred with new life, people moving with purpose instead of fear. Elias looked down at his hands, scarred and massive. Once he had believed they were built only for breaking. Now they had built something, however small, however fragile. The boy tugged his sleeve. "What will you do now?" Elias's gaze lingered on the valley, the trees, the rising sun. His voice came low but steady. "Keep standing. Until they don't need me anymore." The twins smiled, content with the answer. They leaned against him, their small frames dwarfed by his shadow. Together they watched the day rise, silent but bound by something stronger than blood, by survival, by courage, by the choice to fight when it mattered most. And as the narrator's voice settles over the image, it carries the weight of reflection, Inviting thought. Sometimes giants do not stand for glory or legend. They stand for the smallest voices brave enough to ask for help. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.